Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry. With me as always is...
This is Beth Gallagher. If you ever come near my family again, I'll kill you, you understand? Eddie of Edward is True.
And today we're talking about Fatal Attraction, released September 16, 1987. Horror adjacent, more of a sexy thriller. But the ending is very horror. But you know, I feel like after we did, oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Yeah, it's sort of like there's been this need to revisit some of these salacious 80s, 90s thrillers. What's interesting, I have the DVD here actually because I never upgraded it, but it has a very similar like poster. I mean, this predated Hand That Rocks the Cradle, but like the tear through the photo.
Mm-hmm. I think Mommy Dearest got there first. I don't know if anything.
Oh my gosh, it all goes back to Mommy Dearest.
It does.
What was the Barbara, please? What's the...
Yeah. Barbara, please! Please, Barbara. If you need anything, ask Carol Ann. Very quotable. Both very quotable
Well, speaking
movies,
of quotes, I didn't know what you were going to do, but I thought it might have been the I won't be ignored, Dan.
Yeah, I would. The problem is so many people misremember that line, and it used to be people would say, try to quote Fatal Attraction and Glenn Close and say like, I will not be ignored. It kind of evolved into the ether like that for a while. I lived through it. And then when I finally saw the movie, I remember it being like, it's part of like a long stream. It's like the button at the end of like this long tirade of just kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do? You won't take my calls. You won't, you change your phone number. I mean, I'm not going to be ignored, Dan. And the rest of the scene is, just chef's kiss. Love it.
Yeah. No, I remember the Kate McKinnon. I think it was like on SNL where she was doing the Kellyanne Conway thing, and
with Anderson Cooper, right? It was Andy Moffat, I think, was playing Anderson Cooper, and she was all over him, I think, wasn't she?
Or like Jake Tapper, is that what it?
Was it Jake Tapper?
Yeah.
Maybe it was. Yeah, one of those CNN.
But she did it. She
MSNBC types.
She did it right. Like she did it a more like embellished version of it, but she did it.
Yeah,
it was really funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, here we are. We're talking about Fatal Attraction.
Yeah,
we haven't seen each other in like a month. Because I've been away on business, and we recorded like was it 4 episodes in a row?
4.
Yeah, in succession, without knowing the results of anything. Sort of like went for it, and we've had a very long break away from the podcast, even though it's been releasing every week. So just to fill you in on a little context there. And what we're going to do at the end of this episode is we're going to go over the results of the last 3 episodes, just to catch everyone up.
Yeah,
but
and us.
yeah. So just to quickly get into everything here, I'm going to do the usual housekeeping. So if you are new to the Cherry Picker, or if you've been here for a while and you want to support us and help make the podcast even better than it already is, because it's pretty fucking good. I do say so myself. You can head over to my Patreon account. That is Zack Cherry, ZackCherry, and you can subscribe at any tier. That'll give you early access to all of our episodes, or you could subscribe at the the Freddy Krueger tier, and you will have access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is the bonus episode that we do once a month. This past Cherry Picker After Dark, we talked about Scream 7, or at least we
speculated.
It was like part speculation, but it was also kind of part like, what do we want? What do we want from this movie? And it was what was really interesting about it is that because we pre-recorded it before all this like new casting news came out, and we kind of had a disclaimer about that at the beginning, and that a lot of things were probably going to change. And it's interesting, like, how some of the things that we talked about kind of did come to fruition in the casting process. So, we know our shit.
Finger on the pulse. We predicted, or not even predicted, I think we manifested things like no more Patrick Dempsey. That was really a big one.
That was
for
the
me.
big one. Yeah.
And Mindy, and we got our twins back, which I was happy about.
Yeah. So. Well, that's a conversation for another day, but we're we'll just say for this month it's gonna be another Scream centric thing, and we'll just leave it at that. But I do want to thank some of my Patreon supporters who the aforementioned have supported this podcast and made it really great how it is already. But sorry, I'm just stalling for time while I bring up the list of the names.
Tread water.
So
tread that
thank
water.
you very much to the Michael Myers tier supporters: Kyle Beard, Maxime Rivest, Ali Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horace Slut 95, Bruce the Genetic Jackhammer, Rando, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, and the Ghost Faces. Thank you to Eric Champney, Sam Levy, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, aka Tamika, Garrison Nichols, and Craig Lynn. So thank you very much. You can have your name shouted out as well if you want to come and support it as a Michael or Ghostface. And there's lots of other perks and benefits you'll get from supporting me and this podcast on Patreon. But other than that, I want to also thank Jason Voorhees Gallotello, who is the podcast editor. He also appeared most recently on our Ghostface episode as a guest. So thank you very much to him. So, having said all that, do you have a premise for us?
I do.
Please.
All right, you want to hear it in a particular voice?
Just the regular old movie voice,
All right.
yeah.
We'll do that. After happily married New York lawyer Dan Gallagher has an affair with his single colleague, Alex Forrest, increasingly awkward interactions, and a looming pregnancy may now threaten the sanctity of Dan's home life and shift this steamy dalliance into a fatal attraction.
There you go.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Now, other than the DVD I have here, this is like from way back when DVDs were a big thing, because this was like special feature, like special collector's edition is what it says on it, and it had the alternate ending, which I think was the first time that had ever been seen. But where can people watch or purchase this movie now?
Glad you asked, Zach. Well, if you want the latest physical media release, there's a 2022 4K Blu-ray combo commemorating the 35th anniversary, or, as you indicated, numerous Blu-ray, DVD, and VHS editions. It was actually released with the original ending in a VHS edition that I still have somewhere in my house. I couldn't find it to show it off here, but it had like audition footage. I mean, it had special features on it, like after the movie. It was amazing. You can also stream it free with ads on Pluto TV, or free without any ads if you have an active Paramount Plus account as of the time of this recording. But you can't find the series that was a Paramount Plus original anywhere now.
What?
They
Really?
pulled it. It's off the channel. And I wanted to look because Lizzie Kaplan was Alex Forrest, or the Alex Forrest role.
Yeah.
And I believe Pacey, what's his name?
Joshua Jackson was Michael Douglas.
I believe he was the Michael
And
Douglas role, and I'm like, I want to see that, but I never got to.
And wasn't Amanda Peet the wife?
Oh, the wife? Maybe. I don't remember.
Let me just check that real quick, because I just might be making shit up at this point.
Because she's a fucking badass. She and Lizzie Kaplan could have traded roles for all I care. But, oh my God.
Amanda Peet, Beth Gallagher. And our favorite, who's in everything, Toby Huss.
Oh,
who was peanut butter on my
Okay.
penis and Halloween.
Right.
You'd think the last thing he was in that we saw was Maxine. He had a little cameo as a coroner. Yeah.
Yes.
Damn.
And
See,
for
this is
a hot second, I
this
thought it was
is
her father.
what I hate about streaming services and like these originals, because it's just like they're there and then in the blink of an eye they're gone forever. It's like Netflix is a movie series graveyard. Like movies go there to die. I know that this wasn't Netflix.
This was Paramount Plus. They also killed that Grease show that I only saw the pilot of. It was a full-on musical series.
Oh, wow.
And the pilot was amazing. And then it got pulled and I never got to watch another episode.
This is why we support physical media.
This is why.
But yeah, that's too bad. I would have wanted to see that for Pacey, or film class guy number 1, as I like to call him, from Scream 2.
I always wanted more of him in Scream 2 also. I think I made that much clearer when we recorded that pod.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, okay, cards on the table.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Fatal Attraction?
I really, really like it. In fact, I think I have the entire movie memorized. How do you feel about it, Zach Jerry?
I think it's kind of, I mean, to call it mid would be very disrespectful, but I think it's kind of average in a way. Like I remember it being like something that like I'd watched it many times after I purchased it, because that was the first time I'd seen it. When I got the DVD, and remember just like really loving it and feeling like, oh, this is like sophisticated, like adult thriller type things. And I hadn't watched it in like such a long time. Like, you know, a good sign is like, you know, is it a movie that I really like? Have I upgraded it from the initial DVD that I bought? And no, I have not. And I probably haven't watched it in 20 plus years. So just watching it again, you know, I kind of, there's a lot of filler and falderall inside the movie that I'm just kind of like, I wish things would like, were a little bit snappier, or I wish that like, maybe there was more camp that it was leaning into. And I get that this is not that kind of movie, but you know, comparing it to something like Hand That Rocks the Cradle, where I feel like it did lean into the camp. There was an element of crime to it, and murder as well. There's definitely more murder in Hand That Rocks the Cradle. That it's just like those are the movies that I prefer. I think that the ending of this is a little bit more exciting than what we got in Hand That Rocks the Cradle, because I feel like by the end of that movie, it just sort of like was going through the motions. But it's interesting that, like, you know, speaking of the alternate ending and how that all came about, that this was not the original way that it was supposed to be, or even the way that Glenn Close wanted it, because I guess she has a real problem with the ending proper of this movie, what is theatrically shown, and I can see why, because the ending is kind of, it feels out of place with the rest of the movie. And I wanted to talk to you about that. So we can get around to that at any point here. But those are just my thoughts about the movie, is that it's just a lot of scenes that are like repeating, a lot of scenes where there is no new information. It's just sort of like the same thing over and over again. That's not to say I like this movie. There are moments in it that I really enjoy. I think that the telephone terror, I'll say, because they did a really good job of just like reinforcing, like, she's got his number and she's got it again, and they would just cut to like new scenes and the phone would be ringing and it's just like, oh my god, and then it would turn out to be like a completely innocent thing. But I liked it because I felt like the movie was fucking with me at that point, and I like when movies fuck with me. So there were definitely aspects to it that I really enjoyed. But I think that these are awful people, and not that I didn't enjoy watching them, but I wasn't really rooting for anyone. I mean, maybe like Beth,
Right.
But yeah, I got a real issue with both not Dan and Alex, we'll say. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, I understand that completely. Like, one of the things that came up for me while I was revisiting this, because I did, even though I basically have it up here, I want to just watch it with fresh eyes and see has anything changed for me. Not really. But the thing was, I was really kind of fascinated with the fact that, like, there was nothing in the filmmaking on the part of Adrian Lyne or on the part of the screenplay or even on the part of Michael Douglas portraying this character that was working to get us on his side or to empathize with him or to even like him. But the thing was that I actually kind of appreciated was, I know, because I know way too much about the making of this movie, I know that with that particular role, when they got Michael Douglas, who was at kind of the height of his fame in Hollywood at that point, he could make whatever movie he wanted and it could get greenlit if he wanted to make it. He was working on, like, well, he was talking with Adrian Lyne, asking, like, what kind of things, characteristics should I work on? Like, how do you see this man? And Adrian told him, don't build anything. The whole point is that and we've talked about this with other movies in the past, you're an avatar for the audience. Like, you are basically just kind of like a blank slate who makes all the mistakes that the audience knows you should not make. Doesn't mean they shouldn't be on your side, but we're going to put a lot of scenes, which I'm sure they felt like filler to you, but like scenes with him, like interacting with his friends and just kind of like being, it's a hard word to, it's harder and harder to convince people, but being charming and being, just like, being like a dad who interacts with his daughter, like being a good dad, like somebody who's objectively not a bad person, but someone who keeps making really, really shitty decisions like throughout the entire movie.
Those aren't the scenes I'm talking about. It's more so just sort of like because I was wanting more. Fred Gwynne is in this, and and he was like one of like the, like, not top billed or anything, but he was like, pretty early on in the credits, and I only remember him in one scene. So I was just thinking, like, I wanted more of him. I wanted more of those interactions with like friends and stuff. The scenes that were just sort of, like grating on me were just like more of just like the repeating the same thing, like the same conversation between them, or the same, like, all right, here she is stalking him again, and yada yada yada. And it felt like, obviously it was building to something, and there's like the stakes were getting higher as the movie progressed, but it felt like we could have trimmed some stuff off here. Like this probably could have been a 90-minute movie. Like, I think it's
a 2-hour
just under
movie,
2 hours.
yeah.
It probably could have been a little bit snappier. But no, I wanted more of that. I wanted more. I wanted more like judgment from like these like the parents, like Beth's parents, who there's like one moment where, like, after she gets into the car wreck and the father is just like, glaring at him, and there's nothing is said, but just like, I want to know, I want like, as much as like you're saying that like Michael Douglas is this avatar for the audience, like, let us feel shame through him. Like, I want more of that. I want more of like the danger of like getting caught or things like that. Like, there wasn't enough of that, I find. And I think that with all the runtime that they had, they could have implemented a little bit more of that.
I guess they could, and there is definitely like a way to make that movie. But the thing is, I think the thing that I like most is that it all stems from this man who. This is a man who. This tells you everything you need to know about him. He's capable of being happily married, having a child, not getting his rocks off before he sends them all off to the country. So oh, well, he's got to stick it in somewhere. And he ends up, meeting this coworker who's already had like, it's not even a flirtation, but just kind of like a little teasy moment with, at the party the night before and everything like that, when his friend got shot down, but she seemed to be really kind of ingratiating herself to him. And what he doesn't know is that she even just kind of lingers on him as he walks away. She knows he's married. She sees him go to his wife and everything. And he doesn't give it another thought. He's not looking back at her, but she is just kind of like glued to him, like, ooh, that's exactly what I'm looking for. But so he sends off his family, meets up with her, finds out she's discreet, which is, is that a lie? I couldn't decide. Like, is that a lie, or is she? Because she's really good at like dancing around it, doing things that only kind of like get his antenna up and maybe his secretary Martha, but everybody else seems
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes, right. And I love her.
Well, I mean, they're both liars, really, which is why I don't feel sorry for any of their situations. But that kind of brings up another question I want to ask you, because I don't think that we ever really got a definitive answer, and I'm just assuming that it's a lie, of her saying that she was pregnant with his child. And just given just everything else that her behavior before that, I'd always assumed it was a lie. But the thing for me that like cemented it was when she kidnapped little Ellen, and they went to the amusement park, and they're riding on that like roller coaster, like that old like rickety like wood one that's like, those things aren't safe. You shouldn't be on one of those if you've got a baby.
Well, she obviously doesn't have the best judgment in the world, but I think because she gives him the number for, I mean, people can decide. I always thought like she gave him the number for her gynecologist and said, here's his number, you can call him. He took it. And then later on, he's talking to Stuart Penkin, I think is the name of the actor, but his friend Jimmy, the guy with the glasses who hit on her the first night they met. And he's telling him like he called the doctor and the doctor verified. He says, you know how he told me? He said, congratulations. I can't imagine what she must have told him. So I always thought like, okay, I buy that she is pregnant. Like I feel like we're supposed to speculate on that and wonder like, is she telling the truth? Like, is this really something? But I think, cause also it's almost like too campy if like when she follows him home in the car when after he's got the rabbit and he's driving the rental home and he's got the little play-me tape and then he gets home and he brings the rabbit and she sees him outside. She's just like watching them in this beautiful kind of like bay set of windows and watching them have a familial moment where the child gets the rabbit and then she just starts to like vomit. And I always thought like, well, she's in early stages of pregnancy. Of course she's going to vomit. She's got like morning sickness, but just sickness, like nausea. Yeah. And I don't think that it was necessarily a reaction to, oh my God, he's with his family. I can't hold it in anymore.
Because that was the interpretation. Because like I was just in Toronto and like watched this real quick. With my mom before I, got on the plane and came back here, and that scene came up, and we were both like in that moment just said like, is she pregnant or no? Because like, is that morning sickness, or is she just sort of like, it's like the gravity of what she's doing. Like she's gone to this extreme where she's now stalking his family outside of their window and is like up close and just seeing that like, he loves his family. It's just one of the, like, does she actually have a hope in hell here at this point? And it's almost like one of those reactions like, oh my God, like I'm in way over my head, but I'm going to keep doing it. Right. Any guesses on zodiac signs for these?
No, that is much more your arena than mine. I'll let you.
I hate to.
I don't want to label any sign an Alex
oh my God,
Forrest or Dan Gallagher.
It's fun too, but no, I hate to say it, but I get a lot of Scorpio vibes from Alex in this movie.
I mean, let me talk a little bit more about Alex in just a minute. I want to complete my thought on the character of Dan. Like, so this is a man who's capable of like going off and like having this affair with this woman. Then he's capable of like going out and dancing with her and then getting a blowjob in the freaking elevator and everything. And then going back to going back into her place, spending the night, waking up the next or no, he doesn't wake up the next day. He goes back. They end up making pasta together after that awkward moment in the park
where the dog is fucking held captive here. Like,
yes, I know. I feel so bad for the dog absorbing that energy, especially where the evening turns. But anyway, he goes back the next day and they end up having pasta. She sits there and she looks more beautiful than I think she has in any other scene in the movie, where she's just got this like heather gray sweatshirt and her hair is just kind of soft and the lighting is just perfect and everything. And she's telling him, I'd really like to see you again. And not like in a creepy way, like in a completely cards on the table kind of way. And she says, "Is that so bad?" And he says, "No, it's not so bad. It's just not really possible." And he says, "I think you're terrific, but I'm married. What else can I say?" And she goes, "Just my luck." And it's like, okay, so that's where you cut it off and you go home. No, he gets back in bed with her and they make love again. And then they have that confrontation right before she has the famous attempt. Mm-hmm. But so this is a guy who's capable of rejecting a woman to her face over a dinner and thinking it's okay to screw around like one last time before he goes home and hold his dog captive there the entire time. And so it just makes me think like there's a certain amount of shame I think he does feel like that he lets in, but I also think this is a man who's duplicitous enough to walk the wire and only allow himself to feel as guilty as the situation will allow him to disclose, particularly to his wife. Like the first moment you really sense that he's got a grasp of like the gravity of what he's just done is when he first gets home and he plays the message and Beth is on there talking about like, and we miss you, and my parents are asking about you, whatever, and he's just like that distant, like, oh my gosh.
He doesn't even call.
And then he goes back out.
Well, he doesn't even call her back right away. He's like has a shower or whatever, and then he's sort of like, and I actually liked this the cover up, if you will, because he starts to like mess up the bed to make it look like he slept in it. Then he like in his suit gets in and just starts rolling around, takes the spaghetti out of the fridge, feeds it to the dog. Mm-hmm. A lot of pasta was had that weekend.
He was having some other woman's pasta.
But I never thought about that. That's a very interesting point. But that's the thing, like, them having that conversation over pasta and then getting back into bed, like he's sending her mixed signals. And 100%. It's, I think that you're right. You hit the nail on the head there. If that was it, if that was their thing and just had the lunch or whatever, and then he left, the movie probably wouldn't have happened. Like, I think that she might have been, hung up on him and whatever. But it's like at that point, it's like, I can't do this. Is not feasible anymore to continue this affair. But I'm gonna have sex with you right now anyway. And then she does the thing, and then even after that point, she's just like, "Are you gonna call? Like you don't have to if you don't want to." And he's like, "No, I want to." Like he could have just been up front. But the thing is, and this is where they're both like total assholes, because she says like, "Do you like?" Or he says to her, like, "Would you rather I forget who says what. But he's like, "Would you rather I just like say fuck off and leave?" And
because she's telling him, he's trying to like justify it, like we knew the rules, and she's like, "What rules?" And then he's just like, she says, "Don't justify yourself. It's pathetic. If you told me to fuck off, I'd have more respect for you." And he says, "Okay, then fuck off."
Good memory, thank you.
And that's real.
That's
I've seen
when
the movie
she kicks him.
Way too many times.
That's it gets to that point. So they're both like equally culpable in all of this. And it's one of those movies where like by the end, like clearly she escalated the situation and she infused a lot more danger into things than he ever did. But he never really had to pay for his sins. I mean, obviously it's just like, okay, we had this terrible thing happen and yada, yada, yada. But it's just like all the real victims were all the people around,
100%.
Poor Beth and poor Ellen and poor Rabbit. I'm sure it had a name. What was it?
Whitey. Whitey's gone.
Whitey. It was Whitey. Oh my God. Poor Whitey.
Whitey's gone.
Yeah. But the infamous rabbit in the pot scene. And you know what? Like that's. I didn't remember a lot of the movie. Like I remember the climax. I remember that like the rabbit stuff because we're watching it, and I was like telling my mom, it's just like, oh, not looking good for the rabbit. She's like, what are you talking about? Don't spoil this for me. I'm like, you've seen the movie, come on. But I forgot all about Alex kidnapping Ellen from school.
Yeah.
Completely forgot about that. And it was just so weird because it's like she just drove back to the house and like let her out, and I guess to walk up the driveway. But I guess nobody would have been home at that point. So this poor kid, this 6-year-old kid, is going home, and it's just like, how does she even get in the house? She doesn't have a key, I'm sure.
I guess it's the country, and maybe they just don't lock their doors. I don't know.
Well, maybe, but it's just like still, it's like this 6-year-old kid like alone.
Yeah.
Mom's in a fucking wreck.
Yeah.
Like it just Anyway. These people are awful. So anyway,
I'm glad that you brought up Fred Gwynn, and in relation to the rabbit, for the first time ever, I watched this, and because I always see Fred Gwynn in this, and I always just kind of think like, oh, there he is, and I know he's only in one scene. It's incidental. It's like he just needed a paycheck, or he was doing Adrian Lyne a favor. Yeah. We don't know, but and he was a working actor. Like you go where the work is. Yeah. So he was probably happy for the legit like Paramount produced.
We should have had like a scene of like where they were sitting together and just like confronting the situation, and or even like like confided in him that he had an affair, and he could have just said like, you don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, right. And I even thought like it would have been great. I mean, it would have totally derailed the movie. But if after the rabbit scene, if Michael Douglas would have had a scene with Fred Gwynn, and if he would have sat there and just like, and she killed my daughter's rabbit, and he could have been like, sometimes dead is better.
The thing is, though, this predates Pet Sematary.
Yeah, that's true. Still, it would have been a prescient moment for Adrian Lyne. Like, what if you someday star in a Pet Sematary?
What if you just like foresaw the future and I mean, I'm sure the book was already in existence.
Sure.
Yeah. Speaking of like cameos, the babysitter is Jane Krakowski. Is that how you say it? Yeah, from Ally McBeal and 30 Rock and other things,
and
I'm sure.
Numerous Broadway shows. She was, I can't remember if she had done it yet, but she was in, around that time, she was in Starlight Express on Broadway, Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical about trains. It's like Cats, but with trains. And she was on roller skates, getting injured every night, But that's her, yeah. And okay, that's another thing that makes me really appreciate this movie. Is just like how because it starts I hadn't forgotten, but I don't think I had tied it together that it's almost a reference the way the movie opens, because we start on the skyline and there's this wide pan from left to right over this city, kind of like haloed in dusk, and we zero in on a window, and I was like, oh my shit, it's Psycho. Except instead of being in Phoenix, we're in New York City. But it's almost like this random, like, okay, what story are we going to tell tonight? And then we'll just zoom in on these people. But I also like
rear window.
Yeah. Starts a very subjective kind of like, this could happen to anyone also. I feel like it's just,
I could not tell that it was New York. Because it just like looked like a very like, nondescript skyscape
city.
So like, and that's a fun game that I always like to play. Like, a movie starts and you're just like, what city is this? And then they're just like, Manhattan, and I'm like, oh, okay.
But also it does that thing that so many movies in the 80s do that I adore, and the 70s too. But the 80s really kind of capitalized on the domesticity angle of just like eavesdropping on people, just haphazardly, just kind of happening into their home and watching interactions that only kind of endear you to the family, like watching them get ready, things that I don't see happen in movies enough nowadays. Like even when people get ready, they always look kind of ready. They might just be in their underwear, but the fact that like that like Michael Douglas's hair is not messy, but it's not like perfectly coiffed. The fact that Anne Archer is like brushing her teeth and talking into the camera, just kind of like, I'm gonna wear my black suit, like it just has a little extra layer of authenticity to it. I like watching her spill something and go shit, and then her daughter overhears it on the way to walk to let Jane Krakowski in, going shit. It gives something for the audience to kind of like laugh at and disarm themselves, and no direct plot has been laid in yet. We're just kind of like getting to know these people. Things like that. Right from the beginning, and the fact that it does feel like an actual home, even though, okay, the production design, because I think I make mentions often when we talk about these kinds of thrillers, the white monochromatic Adrian Lyne loft look of it all, which I always associate with Alex, but the same can be true of actually the Gallagher home. All the walls are white. And then when they move out to the country, you can literally see them painting. I think it's warmer than a white. I think it's kind of like a really soft pink, but very neutral. Like a lot of monochromatic backgrounds that are neutral and that only allow everything in the foreground to pop even more.
They only white around. I mean, they named their rabbit Whitey for crying out loud. There's no room for color in this universe.
Well, because even with Alex, like there's her apartment, but then there's like the space outside of her apartment, like with the elevator in the house. It's all black.
I was just waiting for a Chucky cameo. Fuck you in the elevator.
Wow, 100%. And then also again, like the sexual act she performs in the elevator. It's already
the fellatio.
Yes, the fellatio. It's a new, what did they call it in Black Christmas? It's a new...
exchange.
I forget, a new exchange. Thank you. Oh my God. Because it's just like, Pennsylvania 29 or Klondike 300. But anyway, so fellatio. But I love that, number one, it's kind of absurd that they're doing this in the elevator just to kind of show like, I don't know, the burgeoning recklessness of her, but the fact that he's still turned on by it, obviously. And it's funny because then we get like that aerial view of him just having the act performed. And people could laugh at that. But the thing that makes it even funnier, so if you weren't already laughing, you can now to just release the tension, is the stranger's feet just kind of like moving across because the elevator stops like midway between floors. So someone is fully aware of what's going on in that elevator and just doesn't care because
it's New York City.
Welcome to New York. Yeah. Welcome to New York. But but then he goes and he reaches for the button again, like it's probably better if people don't see this. And there's something like that the first time they make love in the sink, where it's kind of ridiculous because you got the dishwater running and they're like wiping it on each other and everything. But then I love that like he picks her up from the sink and starts to take her to the bed and his pants are around his ankles. So if you weren't already laughing just because you feel awkward about the raw sexuality on screen in an audience in a movie theater, you can laugh because, oh look, his pants are around his ankles and he can't walk. That's silly. I don't know, all of it, and none of it feels shticky. It all feels just kind of like born out of the situation, which is how Adrian Lyne works a lot. He loves to direct things, let the actors play it out, and if something happens that seems like, oh, okay, we need to change that, he's like, no, keep it, but how can we double down?
Well, it's definitely like something to the film's testament, that it does have a very realistic, grounded in reality vibe to it for the most part.
Sure.
Until and I think that like even because this was like, I mean, it didn't win any Academy Awards.
No.
It was nominated for 6, I believe, including
Glenn got nominated.
Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress for Anne Archer. Nothing for old Mikey. But
women are the most interesting people in this movie.
And didn't win anything, but it felt like there is an air of prestige to all of this, but it's just like it's almost like it's not quite there. And I think that's like my biggest takeaway from this movie is that it sort of straddles this line between like prestige. I mean, you've mentioned before prestige horror. I guess this could be prestige thriller, and like full on camp. And it just like obviously it's more on the side of like, you know, something more Oscar-y.
Sure.
And clearly it wasn't enough to garner any wins. But this is where I have the issue, because it's like, it almost feels like it wants to be this thing. It wants to be the hand that rocks the cradle. It wants to be this crazy, like, batshit, woman scorned thing. but But and that's the thing. It's just like obviously test audiences weren't happy, or the studio or producers, I don't know what the story was, with
It was test audiences.
yeah, with what the ending is. And I don't I agree. I think that the original ending is kind of tepid. Like it's very anticlimactic. Especially the fact that, and then like we'll just say right now, is it a spoiler alert? For people who've never seen the alternate ending, it does tie in more thematically with like things that happened earlier, but Alex kills herself. Like she slashes her throat with the knife after the confrontation, like the last confrontation when he goes to her apartment, and she does it while she's listening to Madame Butterfly. So it like correlates with the story. And then the police find her body, and his fingerprints are on the knife, and he's now
taken into custody.
Yeah, and like prime suspect in her murder. And that's all well and good. Like I think that if the movie had ended on that, like that probably would have been appropriate. But it's like almost immediately Beth finds the tape and listens to the recording, and she's like, it's all good. So it feels like it's sort of like it's getting to this crescendo of like, this is your penance. This is the price you have to pay for all of the shit that you've done. And I fully believe that if that was the case, like that she did that purposely. Like she killed herself knowing full well he's gonna go down for this. And that's the Scorpio part of the character. But she it's one of these things that's just like, oh, close call. That's sort of like the lasting effect of it all. So it's just like it wasn't a good ending. So they obviously went for the more horror-esque ending.
Yes. Which, okay, you mentioned Glenn Close, and I'm sorry if this is like common knowledge, but it just, the thing was, she had done her research prior to this. She doesn't like to talk about it too much nowadays because of what we learn as time progresses about psychology and everything like that. And also, I think she only consulted one person. Yeah. There was a psychologist friend of hers. She gave them the script before they started, I think, even rehearsing, and said, is this kind of behavior from Alex Forrest possible? And if so, why? And the psychologist read the script and said, basically, from their vantage point, that Alex was kind of like a prime example of someone who was sexually abused before memory, and has this kind of like strange, I guess, understanding or perspective of like sex and how it relates to their own worth and even just intimacy and all of that and all of that. Now that's problematic as fuck now, you know, you couldn't get away with saying that now. But that was what she wanted, at least to kind of justify, like, if I can play from something, what will it be? And I think I get inklings of that because Glenn is not turning in a campy performance. She's playing somebody who I think is damaged and who is just trying to make the sense, because also she had this thing with energy. She was once asked, I think in her Actors Studio interview, how would you describe the energy of Alex Forrest? And she'd say just chaos, just no plan, walking into any kind of situation, just dealing with everything moment to moment and just kind of like trying to do the best she can. Even if something is premeditated, there's always like an uncertainty about it, which I think you can see when she's particularly in the parking garage and he discovers his car with whatever kind of chemical compound has,
like acid
sizzling.
Or something, and he puts the rabbit down like right in the
right next to it. God. But toxicity.
Yeah.
You've got this innocent little, you know, white
Whitey
creature in in like a concrete, harsh exterior, but still kind of interior because it's a parking garage next to like these sizzling chemicals, and it's just kind of like what innocence is subjected to in the face of like, you know, this concrete jungle we've created to kind of civilize ourselves. But but if you watch her watching him, it's almost like she didn't have an end game. She just wanted to get to him. She just wanted to do something and then to kind of like watch, okay, is he going to cry? Is he going to get angry? Is he going to just faint? What is he going to do?
Very different from Peyton, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, watching, was her name also Beth? No,
I
it was
don't
Claire.
remember.
Was it
Claire?
Was it Claire? I don't know. They're all
Let me
like
look, let me
Beth,
look. Keep
Claire.
talking.
You know?
I'll look. Yeah, they're all
It
the
was
same.
the actress's name was oh shit, I can't even remember that now. Annabella Shora.
Yes.
But when she was
Claire.
Okay, thank God. When she was when she was watching her like not being able to find the proposal or whatever it was, and just sort of like she had planned that and she was enjoying it, and that's the difference between her and Alex, or just like there's this chaos. It's just sort of like shoot now, ask questions later sort of mentality. It's just like because it's all like emotional based. It's just like how is he going to react to this, like how am I going to mess with him? And it's all like at the core of that, it's just like there's still this idea for her that just like they can be a couple. It's just like like right up until the end. I mean, maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's the like the end of the movie as it is proper is the moment of realization where she knows like this isn't going to happen, or there is no way of making it happen. Maybe she still does. Maybe she thinks that like if she gets rid of Beth, then that's going to be the thing. But it does feel like at that point it's just because she's swiping at him. She's like stabbing him too.
Oh, well, because again, like no plan, just kind of like also that one thing I love about the new ending, because I think I agree with you 100% about the old ending, the original one, is that it does feel a bit anticlimactic. Like, yes, it makes sense thematically, and yes, it's just kind of like, oh, the tape, it plays into something later. I was fine with it in the theatrical run, just kind of like how it is just one more way for her to get to him. And the fact that I remember watching this movie with my mother many years ago. I think I was a teenager, and she was watching him put the tape in the tape deck and then take it out and take it home and put it in the tape deck in his office or his study and put the headphones on. She'd be like, why is he listening to
and
it?
why is he rewinding it? Like, just like,
yeah, right.
Like, how many times do you have to hear this? Like, that's one of those things where you just like, you like throw it out or whatever. Listen to it once and like
he has with her. There is a side of him, because I remember my mom also asking a question earlier when he broke into her apartment. And he's like looking for something. I was like, what is he doing there? What is he looking for? And I'm like, he's trying to, number one, and because I could predict it when I was even a teenager, I was like, he's trying to get something on her to see if she's seeing someone else. And he says as much later in his discussion with Stuart Pankin, Jimmy. And then also, I think he's just kind of fascinated by her and wants to know all of those weird moments we had before I knew you were full-blown bonkers. Like, I want to know, where does it come from? And he ends up getting not necessarily answers, but more clues. Like when he unearths it's underneath the Madame Butterfly program, I think. He finds the scrapbook. Oh, no, he finds the little doodling, which is very kind of like, again, chaotic and just, everything's squiggly. Everything's like not just traced once, but it looks like she went over it 3 or 4 times, like there's a nervous energy at work. But then when he gets to her scrapbook and finds like the article about her father, presumably, who, I did the math. He died in 1959. She told Dan that her father died of a heart attack when she was 7 years old, and the whole thing happened right in front of her. And before she starts laughing and acts like, it was a lie, it was just a joke. She was just trying to get him the way he got her, faking a heart attack while they were playing. The movie takes place in 1987. She would have been 35, 36. Maybe she just had her birthday and turned 36, which she says, I'm 36 years old. This may be my last chance to have a child. So it all plays out. Like everything that she said seems to be true, which makes me think she is pregnant. I don't think she lies. I think so. Maybe the fact that she thinks she's discreet isn't a lie. In her mind, she's like, oh, even if I want to fuck up your life, I can be kind of quiet about it. Until she unravels and is no longer in control.
She's not like using lies to, create chaos. She's using the truth. And that's her kind of weapon, is the truth. Oh, very Scorpio.
My sister's just one thing. My sister was the one who told me once when we watched the movie. She said the scary thing about her is that like when she's lucid and she's talking, basically that's when she's lucid. she doesn't say anything that isn't true. Like even with regard to like, oh, so you mean you had your fun, now you want a quiet life, or you didn't give a single thought to me. You just, you weren't thinking about me, you were thinking about you. And just like that kind of thing. Like, oh, and also I want a little respect. I'm going to be the mother of your child. If all of that is true, it's terrifying because there's nothing he can say about it, and there's nothing he ever does. Yeah. He tries, but she always one-ups him with her reason.
Well, I concede, based on my Zodiac canon, she was telling the truth about being pregnant.
Okay, good.
I'm trying to think what he would be.
I don't know.
My mind just like
Gemini.
Yeah. And remember, we hate all zodiac signs equally here.
Just because he's capable of being one thing on one side and another,
and just
on the
like
other.
but also like the mutability of it all, like just sort of like how quickly he was open to just sort of like exploring it. Like there was no hesitation. It's just like the opportunity came along. Okay, yeah, let's try that.
Right.
And yeah, funny that because you like never guessing anything, and that's where your mind went. That's hilarious.
If it comes up, it comes up. I did want to ask you a question though, because I still don't have an answer for this, and I wonder if I ever met Michael Douglas, if I could ask him why. Do you have an opinion as to why Dan, after his bunny is boiled, his daughter's been kidnapped and returned, but as a result, his wife was in a car wreck, that now his in-laws know the truth about him and they hate him because it's not just you cheated on our daughter, she almost died because she was freaking out because
and the kid was kidnapped.
Mistress.
Yeah,
and because your mistress kidnapped her. So it's like, and killed her rabbit. Yeah. It traumatized her. So like, do you understand why after all of that happens, he buzzes into her building, pushes open the door and attacks her, chokes her, and then decides to stop and then put the knife down? Aside from the structure of the original ending and planting the seeds so that can happen, from a character point of view, do you have an idea why he didn't just off her?
I guess it just seemed like a good idea at the time. Well, that's the thing. That's like the thing is like him coming clean to Beth.
Yeah.
That was his weapon against Alex. It was just like because we're going back to like her using the truth, like weaponizing the truth. He could have weaponized it right back by being like, everything's on the table. There's nothing. The biggest threat that you posed to our marriage, I mean, I guess there's also the pregnancy, but the biggest threat was just like the discretion of it all, and just like her dropping the ball at any time she pleased. And now it's like, that has been taken away from her. He is the one that put it all out for Beth to know about. So at that point, they could just be like, let's get a restraining order. Like, let's do this, like she doesn't have to be in our lives anymore. And if it was a matter of like that she had a child or whatever, it's just like, we'll deal with that as it comes. Like that's what we can do. It's just like, they weren't hard up for cash or anything. Like, they're obviously a very well-to-do, affluent family who, I mean, it seemed like they still owned the apartment and they were going to rent it out, and had this place in the countryside. He's a lawyer, getting lots of work. So I mean, if it came to it and it's like he has to pay child support and like never have anything to do with this woman, like whatever, that's the price that he could have lived with for his indiscretion. So it just seems weird that, I mean, it's not even that it's weird. It's just like, it's more so just like telling of his character that he couldn't even, like, he didn't know when to like call it quits or just do that. That he had to go make a fucking bad situation worse. He had to go throw fuel on the fire And I mean, maybe in that moment, like he had some clarity and was just like, I can't go through with this. But it just
like we're becoming animals.
to
Maybe.
even
like
well, he almost like he was stopping, like he was like expecting like sort of a okay, let's time out, you know, like that was sort of the attitude. And it's like, no, she wasn't having that. So I don't know, like I would have never gone there if I were him.
No.
Which is
no.
why it's just like I don't think that he's that great of an audience avatar, because it's just like he's now doing things that are like just very characteristic to him. But yeah, that was a stupid thing to do, and I mean, look, like choose your own adventure. Does she like murder herself and like make it seem like he did it, or is she gonna show up at his house in the countryside and try to stab Beth in the bathtub?
I prefer the theatrical ending also, just because it has another one of my favorite lines in this movie, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's when Ann Archer is or Beth is in the restroom. The mirror is all fogged up because she's gonna take a bath, and she's got her cast on and everything. She just looks, she's got her bruises under her eyes and everything like that. Still beautiful though, and still with oh my god, with that incredible like 80s teased hair. Adrian Lyne in the 80s was all about that crazy. It was on Glenn Close, it was on Ann Archer. In Flashdance, it was on Jennifer Beals, and in 9.5 Weeks, it was on Kim Basinger. He loved teased, crazy, curly hair. Anyway, so she's there, and she starts wiping the mirror. Sees Alex in the reflection, which is terrifying enough. But I love the first line that Alex says while she's standing there with like the knife just kind of dangling at her side. She just says, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, oh shit. So now you know exactly how far gone Alex is, because the question should be on the other foot, like Anne should be asking you, "What are you doing here?" But you're the one who doesn't belong. And it's like, so now I've got to do something to take you out of the picture, because he tried to kill me last night and he couldn't, because we have something real. Because if we didn't, he would have killed me. So now all I got to do is get you out of the way in my weird, fugue state, and then we can be together and we can be happy. But I also wonder if like there's an element of, because Dan obviously believes that she's pregnant, I'm wondering if he thought killing her meant also killing this like innocent would-be life. Maybe.
I mean, I feel like in that, I guess, rewrite or whatever, the child, the baby, the pregnancy was just completely swept under the rug. It's just like, we're gonna forget about this storyline altogether. That dog, like.
Yes.
Useless. Utterly useless.
Well, maybe she's out in the doghouse. Like,
the dog was the dog was a.
Oh, that's right. She was lapping up the water when it dripped from the ceiling. I forgot about that.
The dog was allowed inside. It was Whitey that had to stay out in the little thing.
Yeah, right.
But
but the dog knows her because they played together at the park. The dog knows her smell.
Yeah, but the dog would have. So that's the thing. Like the dog would have been there like during like all of that, but then at the end when they had the confrontation, it would have been like, oh, this bitch is like not good. Like stop yelling,
attacking mommy and daddy.
Stop yelling at dad. And just the fact that they already know, like dogs can sense things. And
they can.
Yeah, this dog is just utterly useless, unfortunately. I love the little moment where they're like loading everyone into the car and the dog's wagging its tail, and Ann Archer's just like trying to like, gotta make sure the dog's tail is inside.
Shut the door, make sure his tail's not in the way. There we go. Slam the door.
I feel is like it wasn't scripted. It was just sort of like them doing their thing.
Oh, yeah.
There's another moment with a car, and it's right after like the acid on the car thing where he gets the rental. And this like really bespeaks to just him being a piece of shit. He's like parked there on the sidewalk, and there's like all these pedestrians like walking forward, and he just like books it out of there, and like you can see like the one extra is just sort of like, whoa.
Yes. So
I mean, I know that's like obviously the directions that were given and all that, but I translate that to the characters and the world and all that. And Dan was like just about to like run over this guy. So another reason why he's a douche.
But that's New York.
Yeah.
Welcome to New York.
Welcome to New York. Someone's trying to kill us. Yeah.
I also, for the first time, when he, I think, first visits her after he's tried to end it, and she's calling him and calling him and calling him, and he shows up and buzzes her apartment, and he's just kind of like, hey, it's me. And she's like, who? he's like, come on, you know damn well who it is. You just let me in. I want to talk. And she goes, oh, so now you want to talk.
Yeah.
And then he makes his way up probably the elevator to her front door, and then she opens the door and we see she's wearing like kind of like lingerie, like a teddy and like a robe and everything like that. And I've never thought about it before this particular screening, and I just wondered, okay, was she just lounging around in that, like waiting for him to show up, or do you think like between him getting through the front door and meeting her at the front door to the building and then the front door to her apartment, do you think she like raced and pulled her sweats off, put on a negligee real fast, sprayed some perfume, and was just kind of like, we're gonna
I think that both things can be true. I think that she was definitely waiting for him. She didn't know when he was going to arrive, but it's just like we saw her life, when it would like flash to just like her just like sitting there. I was like waiting for the phone to ring or whatever. But yeah, I even if she wasn't, I can see a scenario where she would. It's just like, all right, it's showtime. Let's go. Like
it's showtime.
Oh, new beginning.
But I think what I like about the movie is the fact that it's like a kind of like unapologetically sexual movie when it is sexual. Like the whole movie isn't sexual, but there is some almost brutal sexuality to it, or just harsh, like, look at it. But it never feels, this is the thing, it never like makes me retch and go ew, but at the same time, it's I don't find it particularly hot. I always feel as though I'm watching like kind of like animals at the zoo, like I can't look away, because like how many times are you going to get to see something like this? But at the same time, like, I don't know. I'm wondering if I revisit all of the Adrian Lyne movies of the 80s, if I'm going to like Flashdance or 9.5 Weeks, if I'm going to have a similar feeling, because they all have an inherent kind of sexual layer to them. This one is just kind of maybe the most brutal, the most lethal, shall we say, or fatal, the most fatal attraction. But I think I don't know, when you talk about the prestige and everything like that, I think that's also just like another way of saying like the attention to detail. Like it wasn't made just kind of slapdash and like let's just get this hot movie made and everything like that. There was a lot of mindfulness. They really worked hard to find the right director for it, because a lot of studios turned it down before it finally got bought up by Paramount, and finally they found the right director for it. And even then, there was a lot of controversy at the time of its release. A lot of people thought that the movie was making a commentary about women's roles in the workplace, and that Alex was kind of like what it's like when you let women out of the home and let them go to work, and what they're going to turn into versus like a woman who's safe in the sanctity of her own home as a mother and a wife, like Anne Archer's
Wasn't there
character.
something, and completely off base genre wise, but what's the one with Sigourney Weaver? There's something about like women working. Oh wait,
Working Girl.
Yeah. When did that come out? I've never even seen it. I'm just assuming that that's like the premise is sort of like the women in the workplace.
It's more about like the function of women, like what do they cooperate? Did they cooperate? Do they cooperate? What happens when they don't? But what happens when there's a two-facedness? Does it really have to be like a victory of one? Or like how are you going to conduct yourself in the workplace if you're a woman in the 80s?
I think my favorite movie of that genre, which is also very much like 80s handing the baton over to the 90s, is Don't Tell Mom, The Babysitter's Dead.
Babysitter's Dead!
Christina Applegate. And, what's her face? Who's fabulous, the boss. Yes. Joanna Cassidy.
Yes, I love her. Oh, she's amazing. Miss Blade Runner herself. I love her,
I wish that there was like some way that we could. I want like a horror version of. I know that they remade it recently, and it was like,
Yeah, I heard about that.
Oh, but it's just like, why don't they remake it as like a horror movie or something like that? But that was my favorite, like, woman coming in to, I mean, like teenager posing as adult. But it's, oh my god, it's so much fun. I love that movie.
It's how I learned about petty cash.
Petty cash.
And Danielle Harris was
Danielle
in it too.
Harris is the younger sister. Yes.
Yeah.
You always forget about that because she has like such a small role. It's what's interesting is that we're just totally going with this. The babysitter dies like really quickly. It's like she gets there and then like the next scene she's dead. And I could have sworn there was like more to that. But it's very like, you know, it's almost like a Weekend at Bernie's type of situation where it feels like that's what the movie's going to be, and then it like completely turns into like Sue Ellen is the character's name in like the corporate world and like making it big, and it's just like we've completely forgotten that there's this whole subplot where like the babysitter died and mom's in Australia or wherever, and we can't tell anyone.
It's a prime example of the trailer really not giving you too much, because I understand the babysitter occupied most of the screen time in the trailer. It's just like, TV rots your brains. I remember that trailer on all the, and the commercials on all the time. They made it look like that was the movie, and then you go see the movie, and because I love Christina Applegate, I was on board for the rest of it, you know. But so okay, interesting. With this one, I never felt like it was making a comment on, you know, women's place in you know, in the workplace and everything, because also like nobody ever comes forward and like professes like, you know what a woman really is.
And the only time we really see her in the workplace is when they're having that meeting, and it's like I feel like it's the scene doesn't even linger there; it's just sort of like passing through.
Well, also, I mean, what I like about that scene, like I like a lot of the scenes and kind of like what they kind of offer up, even thematically, like in terms of the movie, because they're talking about like a sexual or sexually infused scandal, and how and all these people in the room are talking about how they're going to handle it, men and women, and Alex is the one to kind of like chime in and talk about this woman who wrote a book about a woman who has an affair with a politician, and this politician thinks it's about him, and they're asking her like, do you did she have an affair with him or not? And she says, yeah, she did, but she also had, you know, affairs with a bunch of other politicians. Any one of them could have made the claim that it's about them. So this guy doesn't have a leg to stand on. And that's when Dan asks her. It's almost like probably the quietest moment between them, and there's moments like that between both for each one of them to almost kind of like linger on each other, where he says, and do you believe her? And she just says, yeah, I believe her. And you just get him looking at her like, okay, this dame's pretty cool. There's something to her. And then he bites into the bagel, and she does this, and he and he wipes it off. But the cream cheese on his nose. But then later, there's a similar moment, I think, like when they're talking about Madame Butterfly over pasta, and it doesn't tie into anything. It's like a little sliver of truth about Dan, but he just kind of says like, I crawled under the chair and my dad like comforted me, and it's the only time I could remember my dad being nice to me was comforting me at Madame Butterfly.
See,
and there's just this shot.
Interpreted that moment as like that was the moment where she fell in love with him.
Yes, 100%. Because everything about that shot, like she's looking at him like, wow, there's something.
Well, he's really
opening up to me.
Yeah, he shared a vulnerable moment with her, which again, I mean, speaking of whatever the situationship was, that's not something you do with like a one night or two night stand or whatever the situation is.
Sleepover, weekend sleepover.
Of someone who you're just like, like we're not going any further than this. Yeah, you don't, you know. There should be rules. There's just sort of like, we're not sharing any personal information. We're not talking about like relatives. We're not talking about like our past. We're just, it's literally like just sex.
Let's get this done.
Yeah.
We're two adults.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
But I love lines like, "You play fair with me, I'll play fair with you." It's like, ooh, dude, you're in it. You are in the thick of it. There is no getting the upper hand here unless you kill her, which you don't because you just can't. But you know who did? Your wife. And that's another thing I love about the ending is that like they found out that when they knew they had to change the ending, the obvious clue was we heard the line I opened with. Beth saying, "If you ever come near my family again, I'll kill you. You understand?" That always got applause in the movie theaters. And even when I watch it now, there's like a little woohoo in me.
Well, it's like it's almost like this promise of something that never happened in the original ending. So it's just like more of a cock tease.
Yeah, and audiences wanted Alex Forrest's blood at that point. And they didn't want him to get it. They wanted her to get it. So they gave him what they want. I still find it a ridiculous operatic ending, but also one that ultimately satisfies. And the thing that I like most about it is there were critics who interpreted the final moment after, they've like taken the body out and then Dan and Beth are just kind of like moving off into the other room or whatever, and we just kind of zoom in on that framed photo of the family. There was a critic who stood out to Adrian Lyne in his memory, I think he talked about it in the director's commentary, about how upset they were that he was kind of like holding up the American nuclear family as this unbeatable force that that it was idealized and saccharine and contrived and stupid and how dare he do that. And he was like, I was pulling in on that photo to juxtapose the horror you had just witnessed and look at this otherwise picture perfect framed family. Maybe that's not the whole story, it's whatever we're comfortable advertising ourselves as. That's not who we are. In order to find out who we are, you got to go back to the movie. You got to zero in on our window and watch us getting ready for a night on the town. And then who are we going to meet? Who's going to get in between our relationships? And what stupid mistakes are we going to make? That's what the movie's about. So I appreciate that.
Anyway, we got a lot to tackle coming up here. So I think that we've said as much as we can say there. So let's get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
All right, so first order of business, we need a cherry on top for Fatal Attraction.
I know it's not the dog.
Oh, God, no.
Oh, motherfucker.
Here's the thing. This is probably considered like the best performance of Glenn Close's career. Maybe
it's one of the most iconic for sure. Then I use that word. It is an iconic performance.
I just I don't have fun with it though. It's not something that I would categorize as like cherry on top. Not the way that for me Rebecca De Mornay is in Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Personally, I would want to give this to Beth because I think that for all the things that we talked about, she is the one that kind of kicks ass. She's the one that I sympathize with and that we were like, yeah, get her. But I'm willing to give it to Alex as well. I just think it might be interesting to have, because I don't know where you're going with the thing, but I mean it might be interesting to have the two of them duke it out for cherry picker.
Okay. I will say I think Beth is kind of like the first domino in a series of this kind of role. I think because we got the ending we did with Ann Archer's character, we are allowed that allowed for Claire in Hand That Rocks the Cradle to throw that punch. You know what I mean? They keyed into the fact that we want to see the women who are victimized by the heavy of the film take their power back, So I'm cool with that. Right. Let's do it. Let's give it to Beth. And Ann Archer gives a really great performance. I love her.
She does for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. We got 3 different things to go over. Fortunately, there's not a ton of comments, but first up, we covered opera a while back, and this was Betty versus Inspector Alan Santini. I nominated Betty. You nominated Alan. The total vote was 69 for Betty and 247 for Alan. Let's see what is being said here.
Okay.
Werewolf. Alan is so fine. SMH. Does it mean smack my head?
We both agree. Yeah. We both agree. Shaking my head, yeah.
Shaking my head?
Yeah.
Smack my head, shaking my head. Yeah. He is. Yeah. Amethyst Frost. Yeah. Voting for Alan because spoilers, but Zach's case for Betty made me laugh a lot. I know the cherry picker episodes for Argento films tend to not get as many views, so I also just want to say thanks for covering opera. I watched his entire horror filmography in 2023 after Deep Red was the first Argento movie that was covered on the old Patreon pod. Became a big fan and love seeing his films discussed in depth by the two guys who introduced me to Argento. I have this one in 6th place on my ranking, and I'd say it's probably his last really good film before his releases in the 90s and 2000s are kind of a mess.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, well, happy to steer you towards Argento, Amethyst.
Yeah.
Bored now. Betty has nicer hair.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Silent Saturn. Haven't had a chance to watch the film yet, so I'm voting blind. Going with Zach's pick, as Eddie seems to have this one in the bag. Oh, thank you. Inspector Allen looks also smoking hot in this pick, so I'd probably forgive him for whatever he's done anyway. I'm shallow like that.
Oh my God. He's the Luigi Mangione of his time.
Oh my God. Wow. Oscarwicks. I know I've said that before without as much difficulty. Betty's actions and reactions were often beyond nonsensical, absurd, and ludicrous, but I can forgive that. How could I be angry with a beautiful woman who's into running around braless, bashing depraved idiots' heads with a stone, and rescuing little lizards? So Inspector Allen it is.
Nice.
Adulteress. Obsession. And that's all that's said. Jarek Corey. Okay, you guys are making this so hard for me. Jarek Corey Tikowski. Would you guys make a Leslie Vernon, It's Me, Billy, Terrifier, or Lover's Lane for Valentine's pod? Ooh. I don't know. We haven't decided on next week's episode.
No, we haven't.
But thanks for the suggestion. All right. So that's one for you. Okay. After that, we did The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, which we've been talking about a lot. I voted for Dr. Victor Mott. You voted for Dr. Mott's Nurse.
Yes.
311 for Dr. Mott and 101 for Dr. Mott's Nurse.
Oh, thanks for showing up,
That's
guys.
like interesting that like 1 in 4 people voted for the Nurse. I want to hear the justification for this.
Me too.
Welshman, first vote, first comment. You wish. Way to go, man. Tiona, Dr. Mott was a creep. Taking that glove off during the examination was despicable. He was a coward and offed himself rather than dealing with the consequences of his actions, leaving a pregnant wife behind. Fuck him.
100%. Yeah.
Our turtle test. I'm beyond apologetic if I'm just messing these up. I was a bit disappointed in this movie. It was a case of being overhyped, just like The Usual Suspects. Stellar cast, though. Who did we overhype it? Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe they listened to the pod before. Maybe we made it sound more exciting than it actually was.
Oh, but it's so good. Jazzy.
I thought so too.
Jazzy Boo. Well, if the doctor wasn't an ass, none of that mess would have happened. Also, if he didn't marry a crazy, see you next Tuesday. How dare you speak of Rebecca De Mornay that way. Mark Burrows.
So protective of her.
Definitely Victor Mott, as his hand should not have been where it was meant to be with a glove. Also, how many more women did he do that to? Yet he should have been killed off big time, yet the movie was still good, with a good cast and powerful performances from the actors as well. Sean Prinsick, I vote for Dr. Mott. That guy was a real creep. Although my actual pick is Claire and Michael. They were just the worst kind of people and not real bright either. Goodness gracious, Claire was such an idiot. She couldn't even figure it out herself. Marlene had to solve it for her. Also, Marlene was able to put the pieces together without going to Peyton's house. Why couldn't Marlene have been the final girl instead? In a perfect world, Peyton would have killed Claire and Michael and taken the kids with her, and they would have lived happily ever after. Sorry, guys, this was a real tough one to get through. On a more positive note, I want to say thanks to Eddie for suggesting Fade to Black. It was a really great watch, and I hope you guys cover it on the pod someday.
Oh, so good.
Claire and Michael, horrible people. Like, watch Fatal Attraction. James Morant, Dr. Mott, no question. He was nothing but a creep. Matthias Egeman, I don't even remember this movie. Not seen it in like 20 years, maybe. My chunky Geordie, Eddie should have been allowed to pick Peyton, and Solomon should have been cherry on top, not Peyton. Well, sorry.
I didn't realize he was double crossing me, so yeah, I'll be more mindful in the future. Go on.
Okay.
You love Peyton.
Peyton is. Oh my god, Peyton. I do. Yeah. Amethyst, Mott, obviously, but I think movies like this are great. A great example for why a cherry on top can still be among the most deserving character to die when two characters have to be nominated. Peyton is the movie, and her situation is sympathetic to an extent, but her actions mean she fits the poll at hand, although still less than her husband. If I got stuck in Eddie's position, I probably would have just picked Claire for being capital D dumb for so much of the movie and allowing Peyton to manipulate everyone so easily. Do we have to change the rules? Do we need to allow for a cherry on top to also be...
I'd be in favor of it. I don't remember it being an official rule, but maybe it is. We employ the rules so seldom that like I don't even remember what they are anymore. So
well, they're on the, if you go to the Instagram page and go under like cherry pick, like it's one of the highlights. It's the first thing that comes up, and it says all the rules there.
Okay, I'll look at it again, and we'll see.
Silent Saturn, Dr. Mott, not just a terrible person, but also a coward, taking the easy way out or not even making sure his wife and unborn child are taken care of at the very least. Don't doctors usually have offshore accounts for just that? Do they? I don't know.
He wasn't crooked enough.
And then we did Ghost Ship, where I nominated Purser, you nominated Jack Ferriman, and special guest Jason nominated Captain Sean Murphy. Purser got 119, Jack Ferriman got 295, and Sean Murphy got 57.
Wow.
Yeah.
Grumble.
Our guests never do well with the no. They do, the thing is we know the game too well. But they always get first pick too. I find that funny.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason.
Sorry, Jason.
Yeah.
Nothing personal from anybody. It's just I was just relieved. I was like, oh good, so I get to my first pick. Like that. Well,
you I was gonna do it by overall votes over the past 3 episodes anyway, so yeah, you would be. It wouldn't have been based on the last one. So very good. But read these real quick. Jazzy Boo, I voted Jack because he could have chosen a better last name. Also, his face is very punchable. He's just so smug. Kent Voorhees, Jack Ferriman, even though he's really hot. He's really hot, but it has a face you want to punch. Vicky,
even in wrong terms.
Vicky screams. Jack, because I'm annoyed with myself for not instantly realizing that someone literally called the Ferryman was in it. The Ferryman being a mythical being who transports the souls of the dead.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Matty Ice.
Okay, I'm upset with me too. Go ahead.
It was all in the name. Matty Ice, Jack. No real reason behind it besides him being the main villain and the catalyst for everything that happens. To be fair, though, he has to be in rally by 7, so I do understand. The flashback scene will always be one of my favorite sequences in horror. Little Emily Browning cringing at herself screaming gets me every time. Lastly, Francesca, the lounge singer, was serving cunt from the beginning and up until her death. Her in that red gown stuck with me for the last 23 years.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. What are we serving tonight? Cunt! Dylan Pendrak, Jack for having one of the laziest last names in all of fiction. Take it away, Edward.
That's funny. Okay, so who am I picking for the cherry picker?
Yeah.
Who deserves to
Who
die the most? Jesus Christ. I mean, it's going to be predictable as fuck. Sorry to do this to you, Zack, but it's Dan Gallagher. Because, yeah, the man, while he's watchable, and I commend the film for that, he really does pay no direct price. Even like when I think the most raw we see him is when he's at the bedside of Beth after the accident, and he just kind of takes her hand after she smiles at him. Like, that's the thing. He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. His in-laws are looking at him like, we don't even know who you are anymore. Look what you did to our daughter, that you almost lost your daughter. And then he looks at his wife and she just smiles at him when she has absolutely no reason to. And that's probably the most key moment where the shame overtakes him. But it overtakes him enough to motivate him to go over to the apartment of the perpetrator, start to murder her enough to implicate himself as someone who could murder her, and then he leaves. That's also what I think that smile is about. Like, while Alex is leaning against the sink and she's just looking at him go. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna fuck up your life." but damn, yeah, because right to the end, all I can think is like the only redeeming thing about his situation is the fact that like he better walk on eggshells the rest of his life, because now he knows his wife could kill someone, and it might be him next time. And I think he deserves it. I think he deserves it, even if not to die, at least to get shot. Like, he got a few stabs, a few flesh wounds.
Yeah.
Big whoop. He needs to die. And he's what's wrong with the world.
And dangerous for pedestrians, yeah.
And neglectful to dogs.
Yeah. Oh my god! And what was all the fruit roll-up shit too?
I think it's because like Adrian Lyne had a child, and his child was always eating fruit roll-ups, and he had become addicted to them just because they were always around and they're really easy. So he made sure they were in the movie because parents in the 80s were eating their kids' fruit roll-ups. That's what it was.
Do they still exist?
I know that they probably aren't called fruit roll-ups anymore, because honestly, in the 80s they might have had or like fruit leather. Like, a lot of places just kind of call them that. It's not trademarked.
Yeah.
But
My favorite usage of fruit roll-ups in any sort of television or movie is I think it's season 4 of Buffy. I want to say it's the episode Doomed, where Spike is having to stay with Xander.
Oh, right.
And in his basement or something, and he was like Anya was mentioning something about like Xander like wrapping the fruit roll-ups around his finger and like licking them, which like we all did it. Come on, you know.
Yeah, you sit there and chew on it and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like he's like had his hand in his face. He's just like, your hands smell. No, it was Giles. No, which episode was it where he was blind? Something blue. Something, because he was like, what's going on? You can't see. And he's just like, get your hand out of my face. It smells like fruit roll-up.
Great pull.
Anyway,
Great pull, Zack.
Anyway, that's, I was thinking about that.
Okay, that's my case. How about you?
Yeah, that was a very long and impassioned argument, which was made all the longer by a reference to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But I'm going to keep mine short and sweet. I'm nominating Alex because she killed the rabbit. Justice for Whitey. That's it.
Hashtag justice for Whitey. How could that go wrong?
Justice for Whitey.
We'll make t-shirts, but
Justice for Whitey. I mean, it could have just as easily been a black rabbit that they called black. You know?
And it would have deserved justice just as much.
Absolutely. Anyway, so yeah, I want to see this showdown.
Okay, me too.
Alex versus Dan. Who deserves to die the most? Vote your heart, vote your conscience. You can go over to the community section on YouTube if you are watching this on YouTube. The poll will be up there. Also, subscribe to us. The RSS feed link is also in the description down below if you want to listen to us instead, if you're tired of seeing our tired faces. You can also head over to our Instagram and follow us there at the Cherry Picker Pod. The polls show up every week. Also, you'll see the rules that are listed there.
Yes.
And you can also vote on Patreon. Even if you're not subscribed to Patreon, I leave the poll public. So throw an extra vote to Edward or myself. Throw it to me. And while you're there, subscribe anyway. Because
Subtle.
because Edward, where can I find you on social media?
Basically Instagram.
Are you
still
good?
have
TikTok's
I still have
done.
no, TikTok's done. Blue Sky I had for like 4 weeks, and I already deleted that. I'm no longer on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, and I'm on Letterboxd, but I haven't been on in a long time. I'm kind of
What's
tired
the last
of
thing
reading
you
things.
posted on Letterboxd? Curious.
I don't know.
You're tired of Letterboxd.
No, it's not even that I'm just tired of rating stuff right now. I kind of like to take things as they come.
Yeah.
Like just kind of show me the movie, let me absorb it, and let me not. If I'm going to analyze the blood out of it, let me analyze the themes, let me analyze the production design, let me analyze like the performances or the through lines of the characters.
Yeah.
But just don't make me rate it.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
That's
I'm kind
fair.
of, I need a break. I need a little
It's
break.
hard. Yeah,
But,
I don't do that anymore either. I either give it a heart or a review and a heart. Or
Yeah,
just whatever.
sure.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah, so
kind of
maybe
arbitrary.
Yeah, I got to redefine my relationship with that app. But find Instagram, Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling. How about you, Zach? Where can I find you?
Main YouTube channel, Zack Cherry. Again, ZACK space CHERRY. And what's the Instagram? Retro Bitch Face, no spaces in that. Twitter, Zack Cherry 8. And I believe the Letterboxd is Zack Cherry. So yeah, go find me on all those wonderful places. I don't got a TikTok. I don't got a Blue Sky. But yeah, we don't know what's going on next week yet because I literally just got home. Like I just got off my flight today.
Yes.
This is the only time that we could do this. So
This is the first thing you did when you got home. Yeah.
well, I mean, I watered my plants because they'd been.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
I have a running list of notes of just like to do things on my phone, which is just how I keep. I don't use the calendar. I don't do that. I just have notes open, and the first thing on there was water plants immediately. So that was like before I even peed, I watered the plants.
You could have killed 2 birds with 1 stone.
And just
well, I'm
peed
not
in
gonna
the-
finish that.
in the plant pot. Yeah, maybe. But I'd neglected them for almost 3 weeks. So
Yeah, don't add insult to injury by pissing on them.
no, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, we'll be back with a surprise next week. But that is all we have for you for Fatal Attraction. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will be right back.